I thought it would just be another camping trip with my straight best friend, but when his sleeping bag broke and we had to share mine, something happened in that tent that changed everything between us. My name is Nathan. I'm 25, and if I could live anywhere, it wouldn't be in some city apartment or downtown condo. I'd be out here, somewhere wild, where the trees are older than people and the sky stretches wide without skyscrapers cutting into it. Somewhere you can breathe without tasting car exhaust. That's why I planned this trip. A full weekend in the Olympic National Forest. No Wi-Fi, no deadlines, just pine needles underfoot and stars overhead, and Alex. I tried not to overthink that part, but it wasn't easy. We met 3 years ago in a sophomore environmental science lab. He'd spilled an entire jar of river sediment across our shared desk and cursed under his breath. I laughed loud enough that the professor gave us both a warning glance. We spent the rest of that semester as lab partners, then coffee buddies, then friends, and somewhere along the way, I fell for him. Hard. He was everything I wasn't. Open, charming, golden. The kind of guy who could make a stranger feel like an old friend in 5 minutes. Alex had this way of talking with his hands, of leaning in when something sparked his curiosity. His eyes always lit up when he talked about conservation, sustainability, anything involving nature. But Alex was straight. At least, as far as I knew. He'd only ever dated girls. So I kept my feelings buried, like old roots under forest soil. Still, a few weeks ago, I texted him. Feel like disappearing into the woods for a weekend? He didn't even hesitate. Hell yes, he replied seconds later. When do we leave? So here we were, standing outside my packed Subaru in the fading Friday light, loading the last of our gear. This is going to be epic, Alex said, tossing his pack in with a grin. I need this break so bad. Work's been insane. He reached up to adjust the roof rack, and his shirt lifted just enough to show a sliver of skin above his waistband. I looked away quickly, pretending to focus on tying down the tent poles, pretending I hadn't noticed that little line of muscle curving above his hip. Still at the consulting firm? I asked, keeping my voice even. Yeah, lots of desk work lately. I'm itching to be out in the field again. He jumped into the passenger seat, already plugging in his phone before we left the driveway. As we hit the highway, his playlist kicked in. Indie folk, alt rock, some soft acoustic tracks, songs that made the trees blur past the windows in the most peaceful way. The drive took about 3 hours. Alex played DJ and storyteller the whole way, talking about his coworkers, a ridiculous client call, the plant he was trying not to kill in his apartment. Every so often, he'd sing along, off-key but full of heart, drumming his fingers on the dashboard, but I listened. I always listened. And around him, everything felt lighter. Halfway through, he turned to me, grinning. Remember that sophomore year trip to Mount Rainier? I groaned. Don't remind me. You tried to start a fire with 2 sticks and YouTube confidence. I almost had it, he laughed. We ended up eating cold beans from the can because you were too proud to admit defeat. He smirked. Yeah, well, at least I didn't forget the can opener. Touché, I said, laughing. By the time we reached the trailhead, the sky was painted in lavender and gold. The air smelled like pine and damp earth, something I never got tired of. We parked, grabbed our packs, and slung them over our shoulders in practiced silence. Just a mile or so in, I said, nodding toward the narrow trail. Lead the way, Ranger Nate. The path wound through ancient trees and mossy rocks. The lake didn't appear until the last turn. I could hear Alex breathing behind me, steady but heavier than mine. We didn't talk anymore. We just moved, letting the crunch of boots and the occasional bird call fill the silence. When we finally stepped into the clearing, Alex let out a low whistle. Damn, this is beautiful. I dropped my pack, watching him walk toward the lake's edge. The last rays of sun turned the water to molten silver, the sky reflected in its still, glassy surface. Tall pines stood like quiet sentinels around us. How'd you find this place? He asked. Got lost on a solo hike once. Found it by accident. He smiled. Best wrong turn you ever made. We set up camp like we always had. I pitched the tent. He gathered firewood. Our roles familiar, comfortable. We'd done this before. Weekend hikes, group trips. But never here, never just the two of us. By the time we got the fire going and finished dinner, a simple stir-fry on the camp stove, the air had cooled. I zipped up my jacket as the sun disappeared. Alex poked the fire with a stick. So, I've got a bit of a problem. I glanced over. What kind of problem? He stood and dug through his bag, pulling out what looked like a flat blanket. My sleeping bag zipper's totally shot. Tried fixing it earlier. It's useless. He held it up. Completely separated, unfixable. Forecast says low 40s tonight, I said, frowning. Yeah, I was hoping it would hold. I looked at my own bag. Winter rated, roomy, technically made for two. My heart thudded. You can crash in mine, I said, trying to sound casual. It's big enough. Better than waking up frozen. You sure? Of course. His shoulders relaxed. That easy, golden smile lit up his face. Thanks, man. I promise. I don't snore much. We stayed up a while longer, warming our hands by the fire, trading stories. He told me about work. I told him about this weird gig where I photographed a couple's mountaintop wedding, and the bride's veil got stuck in a tree mid-ceremony. We laughed until our sides hurt. The cold crept in closer. I couldn't stop glancing at the tent. At the sleeping bag waiting inside. At the friend I'd been quietly in love with for 3 years. This trip was supposed to be a break, a breath of fresh air. But as I watched him rub his hands together and smile at me through the flickering firelight, I knew, deep down, this weekend might change everything, and I wasn't sure I was ready for what that meant. Dinner had been easy, a one-pan stir-fry over the portable stove, just enough seasoning and smoke to make it taste like something you'd never get back in the city. Alex sat cross-legged across the fire from me, chewing contentedly, sipping from his water bottle like we were kings out here. Just two guys at home in the middle of nowhere. The stars were starting to break through the navy sky. Faint at first, then sharp and bright. The lake beside us was still and black, mirroring the silhouettes of the pines that circled its edge. The fire crackled. The air kept growing colder. This is perfect, Alex said between mouthfuls. Seriously, Nate, I needed this. I smiled behind the rim of my red metal cup. Glad you came. He leaned back on his hands, stretching his legs toward the fire. You always know the best spots. If I'd planned this trip, we'd be sleeping in a puddle behind a 7-Eleven. You're not giving yourself enough credit, I replied. You remembered marshmallows and forgot a sleeping bag, he added, deadpan. I glanced toward his gear, piled just outside the tent, slightly disheveled. That bad? He stood, walked over, and pulled out the mangled mess of nylon. Holding it up like a white flag, he shook his head. Worse than I thought. It's basically a glorified blanket now. I stepped closer to see the damage. The zipper had completely separated, unrepairable without tools or a miracle. It can't hold heat, I murmured. Not in this weather. It's supposed to drop to the low 40s tonight, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. A nervous gesture I'd seen too many times before. Look, I hate to ask, but your sleeping bag's that big winter one, right? My pulse jumped. I looked at the tent behind us. At the double-wide sub-zero rated bag I'd bought for a solo winter trip that never happened. The one already unzipped, waiting. Yeah, I said, trying to keep it casual. It's got room. Alex gave a sheepish smile, grateful. We'll be snug, but I promise I won't hog the blanket. I gave a shrug, even as my heart pounded against my ribs. Better than you freezing out here. We went through the familiar motions, cleaning up camp, sealing food in the bear-proof container, dousing the fire, making one last trip to the makeshift bathroom spot. The whole time, I tried not to watch him too closely, tried not to imagine what it would feel like, lying next to him, skin brushing skin, breath mingling, in a space too small for anything but the truth. Inside the tent, I laid the sleeping bag flat, unzipped halfway to make it easier to climb in. The lantern cast a soft glow against the nylon walls, flickering as the breeze tapped the fabric. Alex changed quickly, down to a t-shirt and flannel pajama pants. I did the same, facing away, pretending not to notice when his shirt lifted again, or when the muscles in his back shifted beneath his skin. So, how do you want to do this? He asked, standing near the tent opening, a little awkward. You get in first, I said. You'll be against the wall. That way you don't have to climb over me if you need to get up. He nodded and slid into the bag, wriggling into place with exaggerated care. Roomy enough for a king. I turned off the lantern, plunging the tent into darkness, broken only by a faint silver light filtering through the fabric. I crawled in beside him slowly, trying not to make it weird. But there was no way around it. It was weird. The bag was tight. Our legs touched. Our arms bumped. His shoulder pressed into mine with every breath. We lay there, stiff and silent. Only the sounds of distant night creatures filled the space around us. "This is kind of awkward, huh?" Alex whispered, chuckling softly. "A bit," I admitted. "But at least we're not freezing." He shifted, turning onto his side, facing away. The movement brought my chest against his back. I hesitated, unsure what to do with my arm. Then slowly, I draped it over his waist. It felt natural, practical, I told myself. But it was more than that. He didn't flinch, didn't tense. He just settled into the position like it was nothing. "Is this okay?" I asked quietly. "Yeah," he said, voice low, rough with something I couldn't quite place. "It's comfortable." His body gradually relaxed. Mine didn't. Not entirely. My heart was pounding. My skin burned, despite the cold outside. Every breath he took echoed through me. We stayed like that for a long time. Then, in a voice so soft I almost missed it, he asked, "Nate, have you ever wanted something but were afraid to admit it? Even to yourself?" My mouth went dry. I swallowed. "Yeah," I whispered. "I have." Silence. For a moment, I thought I'd gone too far, said too much. Then he moved. His hand, the one resting near his stomach, slid back. He found my hand where it lay against his waist, and slowly, carefully, he curled his fingers around mine. He intertwined them, not playfully, not casually, just there. My breath caught. My chest tightened with everything I couldn't say. My eyes burned. He didn't speak again. Neither did I. But our fingers stayed locked, tangled like roots under soil, hidden from the world, but growing in the dark just the same. I didn't sleep. I lay awake the entire night, listening to his breath, feeling him. That was just the beginning. I woke before he did. The faint morning light seeped through the tent walls, casting everything in soft gray. For a moment, I just lay there, still. Then I felt it again, his hand still in mine, his back warm against my chest. Our bodies tangled beneath the sleeping bag, like they'd never known how to be apart. I should have moved, but I didn't. Eventually, Alex stirred. A slow inhale, a subtle shift. Then his eyes blinked open. And the weight of what we'd shared in the dark settled in the space between us. He didn't pull away right away, just stared at the ceiling of the tent, his brows drawn together, like he was working something out. Then, wordlessly, he slid out of the sleeping bag. I sat up slowly, watching him stretch in the narrow space. His shirt lifted. His jaw was tight. "Morning," I said, trying to sound casual. "Morning," he replied, grabbing his water bottle and stepping outside without another word. That set the tone for the morning. No eye contact, no jokes, just quiet movements. We made breakfast, scrambled eggs over the stove, toast that leaned more toward burnt than golden. He barely spoke. And when he did, his voice was flat, neutral. It shouldn't have hurt, but it did. After we ate, we cleaned up in silence. The trees swayed gently overhead. Birds chattered in the distance, nearby, and yet the world between us felt suspended, hung in something we hadn't named yet. We took the trail down to the lake to rinse the pans. The air was crisp. The water gleamed like glass, reflecting the morning sky. Alex crouched at the edge, scrubbing in silence. I joined him, both of us pretending we were fine, pretending last night hadn't happened. But every time our shoulders brushed, or our fingers nearly touched, I saw him flinch. Not from disgust, but from something more uncertain. Confusion, maybe. It wasn't until later, after we'd hiked a few trails and the sun had risen high overhead, that things began to shift again. We came back to the lake to swim. I waded in first, letting the cold water bite my skin, until the shock faded and calm settled in. Alex followed, gasping dramatically as he dove under and surfaced right beside me. Jesus, that's cold, he laughed, slicking his wet hair back. You'll live, I said, splashing him. Oh, it's on, he grinned, and before I knew it, he lunged. We wrestled in the water, laughing, shoving, dunking each other. It was reckless and messy and familiar. But there were moments, small flashes where something shifted. When his hands lingered too long. When his chest pressed against mine a second too long. When I caught him looking at me, not with that usual spark, but with something deeper, something searching. By the time we returned to camp, our clothes hung on a line to dry, and we were back by the fire, fidgeting with the drawstring of his hoodie, stealing glances when he thought I wasn't looking. After dinner, we didn't even pretend to stay up late. The fire was low when he finally said, I think I'm gonna turn in. Yeah, me too. Inside the tent, he climbed into the sleeping bag first again. I followed. Slower this time, unsure what I was stepping into, the zipper clicked shut, sealing us in. But the space between us felt wider than the night before. Even though our bodies were still pressed close, we lay in silence, until he spoke. I almost didn't come. His voice was barely a whisper, but it sliced through the dark. What? I asked, turning slightly toward him. He was on his back, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. I made up like 3 excuses not to, he said. Told you work was too crazy, that I had to see family, that my gear wasn't ready. Why? He exhaled, shaky. Because I was scared. Of what? His eyes found mine in the dark, and my breath caught. Of how I might feel if we were alone. The air left my lungs. Alex turned on his side, facing me now. His face was shadowed, unreadable, but his voice trembled. I've been thinking about you, Nate, for months, and I kept pushing it down, telling myself it was just closeness, just friendship. I didn't move, didn't breathe. But last night, he continued, when you put your arm around me, when I held your hand, I didn't want to let go, and that scared the hell out of me. He reached for me, fingertips brushing mine again in the dark. I've been thinking about you, in ways I didn't let myself understand before. I turned toward him fully, and for the first time in days, I let myself hope. Me too, I whispered, and then I kissed him, or maybe he kissed me. I don't know who moved first, but the space between us disappeared. His lips were soft, tentative at first, like he thought I might pull away, but I didn't. I couldn't. He deepened the kiss, hands sliding up to cup my face, my fingers tangled in the fabric of his hoodie, pulling him closer. The tent was silent, except for the sound of our breathing, of our lips parting and finding each other again. The kiss wasn't perfect. It was messy, unsure, but it was real. When we finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine, his breath warm against my lips. I've never kissed a guy before, he whispered. How was it? His grin was slow. Kind of amazing. We lay there for a long time, kissing between laughter, between whispered truths. He traced the back of my hand with his thumb. I tucked his hair behind his ear. Eventually, exhaustion won. He curled into me, head tucked beneath my chin, one leg draped over mine. The sleeping bag didn't feel tight anymore. It felt like home. I woke to the soft warmth of Alex's breath against my neck. For a moment, I didn't move. Just listened to the birdsong, to the rustling of leaves, to the steady rhythm of his breathing. His arm was draped over my chest, his leg tangled with mine beneath the sleeping bag. He was pressed against me like he belonged there, like he always had. And the strangest part? There was no panic, no confusion, no regret, just peace. I shifted gently, trying not to wake him, but his eyes opened, still hazy with sleep, soft with something I didn't quite have a name for yet. Morning, I whispered. He smiled. Hey. We didn't say anything else for a while. We didn't need to. He leaned in and kissed me, sleepy, sweet. His fingers brushed my jaw, And just like that, we weren't friends pretending anymore. We were something else, something real. Later, cooking breakfast over the camp stove, eggs and leftover potatoes, Alex kept bumping his hip against mine, grinning every time I rolled my eyes. He stole a kiss while flipping the pan and nearly dropped the spatula. "You're terrible at this," I teased. "I'm distracted," he said. "Shameless. You're the one making eyes at me while I'm trying to cook." "I am not." He kissed me again before I could finish, leaving me breathless and laughing. After breakfast, we packed light and took one of the side trails, the canopy growing thicker as we walked deeper into the forest. We didn't talk about what we were doing. We didn't label it. But his hand found mine like it always had, and I held on like I never wanted to let go. We stopped at a waterfall I'd found the year before, a place I'd never shared with anyone. Water tumbled down mossy rocks into a crystal-clear pool. Sunlight filtered through the trees like golden ribbons. Alex stood close, water misting his skin, his smile softer than I'd ever seen it. "I've always loved being out in nature," he said, fingers brushing mine. "But this is different." "How so?" "I'm not just seeing it now. I'm feeling it. All of it. Like it's wrapped around me. Like I finally get to exhale." He kissed me then, with the sound of water and wind behind us, like it was the only thing he wanted in the world. And I kissed him back, fiercely, gratefully, like I wanted that moment to last forever. We took photos of the trees, the light, the water. But then Alex handed me the camera and said, "Us too." He pulled me into the frame. We took one, then another. One where he kissed my cheek. One where we just stared at each other, smiling like idiots. Moments frozen in time. Proof that what we were feeling was real. Then he said, "I think I'm okay with that. As long as it's with you." I kissed the top of his head and held him tighter. That night, after the fire burned low and the stars blinked to life above our tent, we climbed into the sleeping bag again. But it wasn't like before. There was no hesitation, no quiet wondering if this was okay. We already knew. Alex turned toward me, eyes catching the moonlight. "Nate," he said, voice low and unsteady. "I've never felt this way before, with anyone." I cupped his face, brushing my thumb along his cheek. "Me neither." This time he kissed me first, deep, slow, full of something reverent, like he was trying to memorize the shape of my lips, the sound of my breath. Clothes came off gradually. Between kisses and laughter and trembling fingers, his hands explored me like he was discovering a world he didn't know he needed. And my body responded like it had been waiting for him all along. We made love in the dark, quiet and close, our bodies pressed together in the most honest way they ever had. The narrow cocoon of the sleeping bag that brought us here. The way he moved, the way he touched me, careful, curious, charged with everything we hadn't said but no longer needed to. There were no sharp lines, no rules, just us, wrapped in heat and heartbeats, and gasps only we could hear. He kissed down my chest like he was tracing a map, like I was something sacred. And when we finally reached the edge and fell, trembling, breathless, I didn't feel scared. I felt found. After, we lay tangled in each other, the sleeping bag pulled to our waists, skin warm against skin. He pressed soft kisses along my shoulder, fingers drawing lazy shapes across my stomach. "I can't believe this is real," he whispered. "It is," I said. He looked up at me, eyes glassy in the dim light. "Promise me something. Anything. Don't let this be a one-time thing." I smiled and kissed him again. I wasn't planning on it. He nestled closer, head beneath my chin, one leg slung over mine like we'd slept that way for years. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines. Inside the tent, it was warm, still and full of everything we didn't yet know how to say. As I wrapped my arms around him and felt his heartbeat slow against mine, one truth settled in my chest with terrifying clarity. I had never been more certain of anything. And I knew this wasn't the end. We were in a tent again, but it wasn't just any tent in any forest. He kissed me like we were the only two people that had ever existed, Every touch was a question, every answer breathless. When his hand slid down my side, across the curve of my hip, I shivered, not from the cold, but from finally being wanted by the one person I thought I could never have. My hand threaded through his hair, and he leaned into it like it steadied him. Our legs tangled again, bare now, nothing between us but skin. He kissed down my neck, slow and deliberate, like he was learning the rhythm of my pulse. At my collarbone, he paused, just breathing me in. I could feel his heart, fast, uncertain, but steadying with every shared gasp. "I don't know what I'm doing," he murmured against my chest. Not hesitation, reverence. "You're doing everything right," I said, voice thick with need. His fingers moved over my stomach, tracing the lines there, slipping lower with infuriating patience. The sleeping bag held us close, sealing in our heat, our scent, our everything. Every touch blurred the line between us until we weren't just lying next to each other. We were part of the same current, the same flame. He rolled over me, climbing with a careful kind of hunger. Moonlight touched his eyes, turning them translucent, lit from within. His hands framed my face, thumb brushing over my lips. "I've thought about this," he whispered. "Never let myself believe it would actually happen." I didn't answer with words. I kissed him, deep and anchoring, laced with everything I couldn't say aloud. Our hips moved together, slow at first, learning the rhythm of something brand new. His skin burned against mine, and I arched into him like he was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. We didn't rush. We didn't need to. We took our time, exploring, unwrapping, exhaling. We found the places that made each other tremble, the spots where breathing caught, and everything went still. We built something in the dark, not just desire, but something deeper, something real. When we finally collapsed into each other, bodies slick, hearts thudding in sync, it wasn't just release, it was arrival. We lay there forever, our hands roaming in soft, absent-minded patterns. He kissed the edge of my jaw again and again, like he couldn't stop, like he didn't want to. And I didn't want him to either, because nothing had ever felt more right than Alex, in my arms, skin to skin, heart to heart, finally mine. The rain started just before dawn, soft, steady, like a lullaby against the tent. I stirred beneath the sleeping bag, the weight of Alex still draped across me, warm and grounding. His head rested on my chest, his breath slow and even. One of his legs tangled with mine, his arm locked around my waist. Like his body already knew something, his mind was still catching up to. I didn't want to move. The tent was dim, the sky outside still gray and sleepy. For once, I didn't care about the gear getting damp or the hike back. All I wanted was this, him, here. He shifted, nuzzling into my chest. "I can hear you thinking," he mumbled, his voice rough with sleep. I smiled, kissed his forehead. "Good thoughts, very good ones, I hope." He lifted his head slightly, hair sticking in every direction, and his sleepy grin made my chest ache. We didn't say much that morning, but eventually, the real world started calling. The tent grew colder, the rain didn't stop, and we had to pack up. Alex sat cross-legged near the fire pit, watching smoke curl into the mist. I rolled up the sleeping gear and glanced over. "You okay?" He nodded, slow. "Yeah, just thinking." I sat beside him, close enough that our knees touched. About this place, this weekend. It's going to stay with me no matter what happens next. I reached for his hand, laced our fingers together. "Me too." We worked in sync, breaking camp, efficient like always. But this time there were pauses, kisses between folding the tent, hugs after sealing the last food bag, touches every time we passed gear. The hike back was slow, partly because of the rain-slick trail, mostly because we kept stopping, kissing under trees, smiling like no one would ever know. And every time he looked at me with that quiet smile, it hit me all over again. This wasn't just a moment. This was something real. At the car, he tossed his pack in and turned to me, rain dripping from his hair. "Wait," he said. "What?" He stepped forward and pulled me in, soaked jacket and all. Before I could speak, his mouth found mine in the rain. Slower this time. Sure. Certain. When we pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. I love you, Nate. I think I've known for a while. I just didn't let myself believe it. On the drive back, my hand rested over the console, only letting go when I needed both hands for the road. We talked about normal things. Movies, work, whether the Thai place near his apartment was still open. But, underneath it all, there was something deeper, quiet, present. We were already building something. As the city skyline reappeared, he squeezed my hand. "What's funny?" he asked. "What?" I was terrified to come back to real life after this, but now, I think I'm excited. Why? Because I still get to do all the same things I love. Coffee runs, movie nights, trail hikes. But now I get to do them with you. I smiled, heart blooming in my chest. Yeah. And now I get to kiss you after. He grinned and kissed my knuckles. It's like I'm falling in love with my best friend all over again. But this time for real. When we reached his place, neither of us moved to get out. The rain tapped gently on the roof. The world outside felt paused. "Stay tonight?" he asked softly. "I'm not ready to let you go yet." I leaned in, kissed him. "Not tonight. Not ever." As we carried gear upstairs, giggling like kids in the elevator, I knew something with absolute certainty. That broken sleeping bag didn't just lead to one. And now! There was no going back, just forward, together. We didn't say goodbye that night. We didn't need to. Later, standing barefoot in Alex's kitchen, watching him laugh at something dumb I said, radiant and real in his own space, I realized. I wasn't just leaving with memories, I was leaving with him. This trip, this tent, this forest. It all started with a broken sleeping bag and ended with a promise that what we found out there wouldn't stay lost in the trees. That this was real. And whatever the world had in store for us next, I knew one thing for sure. I had fallen in love with my best friend, and by some miracle, he had fallen back. This isn't the end, it's only the beginning.